what the Hallows, what this Iceplex will offer Greenwood that we don't have now. We'll have a state-of-the-art menu for ice sports. We'll have junior fuel youth hockey as well as intermediate hockey. We'll have lessons and skills camp, like I said, goalie camp, ice skating, pair skating, the different subdivisions within ice sports. Figure skating will be allowed. Curling is potentially could happen here. Public ice skating is their intent, and they do at their other facilities to always have certain hours of the week dedicated for public skating at a nominal cost. It's good for the community because it exposes the 50,000 plus Greenwood residents and those outside of Greenwood to ice sports. It is good for the Iceplex, as then maybe a young child who has never had the opportunity to skate is interested in, say, learning figure skating or learning hockey or just learning how to skate and wants to take lessons. So those will be held often on the weekends. Broom ball, which is kind of an interesting game where you don't have to even have skates. You play with brooms and you're on shoes on ice. I know that was offered is offered at many of their facilities. And then adult hockey leagues, as well as local, regional, and national tournaments. They will also have 2 fields and turf to begin with, and those can be converted, as you know, as many of you have children, or grandchildren, or families in the space. Indoor soccer is huge. It's growing quicker than the facilities can accommodate for it in this country. They play year-round now, and they play everywhere. So this is a big opportunity for them. Lacrosse is a growing sport in Center Grove and in Greenwood and in the Indianapolis area. It's very big on the East Coast, specifically in the Chesapeake region, and they hope to capitalize that. And then there's futsal. Futsal is huge on the West Coast and is moving its way east, which is essentially smaller soccer fields indoor with its own set of rules. These are the emerging sports in this country, and this allows Greenwood to have state-of-the-art facility for both kids and families who enjoy these sports. So that gives you a broad overview of the facility. As Krista said, the mayor's very excited. We're very excited. This is a huge investment for the city, a huge opportunity for recreation massing in the core of our community, and we're very happy to participate.
So with that, what is specifically before the Economic Development Commission today is the first step in the process to welcome this facility and this entity to Greenwood. What we are asking you to do today is to designate the 6.3 acres that are necessary in Freedom Park as an economic revitalization area and an economic development target area, and to recommend that to the Common Council. If you favorably, your recommendation, favorable or unfavorable, will then go to the Common Council. The Common Council will have a series of 4 meetings on it. It will have a declaratory resolution and have 3 meetings on that, and then it will come back for a confirmatory resolution and a public hearing at the end of that process. Simultaneously, while that is running, the park board will be doing its own process and considering the ground lease, etc., for the deal. So what we're asking today is approval of both of those, or recommendation of approval of both of those designations as both an ERA and an economic development target area, and recommendation of the tax abatement. The tax abatement that is proposed takes advantage of the flexibility that was recently introduced into Indiana law. Previously, you had a standard 10-year abatement schedule that most tax abatements have followed. What we're requesting today is something less than that. We're requesting a 5-year tax abatement on real property only. That means personal property, all of the equipment, etc., will not be abated. That will be taxed in year 1 at its full assessed value and passed through. The tax abatement for real property, like I said, is an abbreviated 5-year schedule. It goes on an 180, 60, 40, 20 percentage basis. I think it's important to note that this property is not in a TIF district, so the property tax that is generated by this entity will immediately begin flowing through to the underlying taxing entities, including the city, the school, the library, etc., in year 1 for personal property and in year 2 for real property in this one. Currently, because the property is in a park, it is assessed at 0. So any increment here will be net increment raised. The city will retain ownership of the land, but because the land is being leased to a for-profit
discussion, commissioners?
Kristen, I think I got most of my questions answered, but for the audience perhaps, during that first 5 years during abatement, it basically runs from 0 the first year to full taxation at the end of 5 years. So
Correct.
on the average over the 5 years, it's normally right at 50%. How much will that be?
How much will the overall abatement be?
How much will they be paying in that first 5 years?
How much will they pay in the first 5 years? With respect to real property, we expect them to pay around $300,000 total in that first 5 years of property taxes. That does not include the personal property. We expect the personal property in this deal to be substantial. Because they haven't requested abatement, we haven't ran those numbers, but I would guess, over the 5 years, that would be at least another $100,000 in personal property taxes.
And the $300,000 for property taxes, since it's not a 10-year abatement, that second 5 years is going to be around $600,000.
Correct. We expect that it will be closer to, $700,000 by that point.
And you had mentioned since it's not in the TIF district, that money goes to the library and the schools and so on.
Correct.
And do you recall, I'm thinking like something like 2/3 or 3/4 of all the taxes collected, property taxes around here, actually go to the school, not the city, right?
Yes, there's a stacked rate in that particular jurisdiction. It's Greenwood Schools, just under 2 and almost half, 0.9, roughly 0.89, something like that, is the current Greenwood School District. So they will receive half of that personal and real property on the schedule that Chris mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
Chris, I was just wondering, with the development of Freedom Springs and now the middle school, and then this added project off of Averett there, has there been any consideration as to the effect of traffic and the possibility of having to widen that road?
Of Averett?
Yeah.
Yes, there has been discussions with respect to improvements on Averett Road. That's in sort of the long-term plan of the city. Also, certain improvements to Averett Road are being required of the middle school as it goes in. So with respect to the intersection into the middle school, long-term though, the main improvements are going to be made to Worsville Road, the east-west corridor that runs directly south of there. That is part of the city is planning major improvements to that to make it a 4-lane road. All the way across is the east-west corridor. So at that time, additional road improvements may also be contemplated.
What about traffic being dumped into the subdivision to the west? Has that been considered?
To the Brighton Estates.
Mhm.
At this point, there is no traffic, there would be no road that connects Freedom Park to the subdivision. There is an extension of Stop 18 that has been in the city's long-term comprehensive plan. It's been in there for over 10 years that would run through that park. During that time, the park has always been contemplated to hold a major aquatics facility, and also potentially at one point we were discussing having a YMCA located in this park, actually on the same pad that we're now building the Iceplex. Brighton Estates currently has only one entrance in and out of it. For its own purposes, in order to comply with the subdivision control, its developers are going to have to develop a second entrance and exit out of that neighborhood in order to comply with fire safety. What those developers do is, something between them and the citizens of Brighton Estates, where they decide to put that exit. They have a couple of options I know that they're considering. At this time, the city has no immediate plans to extend Stop 18 Road, and it's not necessary for the Iceplex. They're not requesting it. However, I would note that it has been on the long-term plan for the city and shown on maps for over a decade.
I just saw that it was on the drawing here that it appeared to be going right into Brighton Estates. So I just wondered.
That is on the comprehensive plan. At this point, the Iceplex is not requiring us to build that road, and the city has no immediate plans to do so, no funds allocated towards doing so. That is one of the options that the developer has in order to find that second entrance into the property, but the developer also has a couple of other options.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just want to, did you say that was the personal property tax would be $100,000? Is that per year?
No, it would not be per year. I'm just estimating, based on the real property, that it would probably be at least 100,000 over the 5 years. We haven't ran those figures, so that's just my guess based off of what I've seen on other abatements, that it would be at least that amount.
So over a 10-year period, if you looked at the taxes due, plus the personal property tax, this plan would exceed over $1 million in taxes.
Correct, because we are estimating that the real property alone is approximately $150,000 a year in taxes. So the last 5 years, the loan would be $750 of that.
Plus 300,000.
Yep, so you get there just in the real property.
So $1.25 million in
Yeah,
taxes.
anything that would come in personal property would just be bonus on top of that $1 million.
And currently the property is taxed at 0, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners? I want to open it for questions from the audience. To my left is Drew Sager, who's our commissioner. These are all commissioners. Bill Robertson, Don Kynes, and John Asher, should you choose to address them. Yes, sir.
My name is Sanford Pedersen. I've been a homeowner and a business owner in Greenwood for 13 years.
Okay.
Development is always a good thing for a community, particularly when it brings in tax revenue and when it's appropriately cited. I welcome the interest of the Indiana Ice Arena in the city of Greenwood. However, I rise to speak in very strong opposition to the placement of a commercial business in the middle of a quiet residential area in which I happen to live. Since Greenwood Springs was opened, I have seen a tremendous increase in the number of cars not from my subdivision speeding through at speeds of 45 to 50 miles an hour and upwards. I understand that we are expecting 100,000 visitors to the Iceplex. I see no consideration of what happens if the Indiana Ice Arena, with all due respect, has their situation fall through. What is the city stuck with and what are we as taxpayers stuck with? I see no consideration, I do see some consideration of the traffic, basically expanding and putting through routes through what have heretofore been quiet residential areas. Nothing about the zoning issues, nothing about the infrastructure, water, sewer, electric, etc., and certainly nothing about the impact on the surrounding communities. And in fact, I'd like to point out that unless I'm mistaken, this meeting is being held in violation of the open meetings law that requires a 48-hour advance notice, and weekends do not count. We are concerned about the traffic, the noise, the congestion, the crime, the decrease in home values. Because of all of this, when you're plunking a large commercial business into quiet residential areas, schools, churches, parks, yes, they belong in quiet residential areas. I would support this company coming to Greenwood, but in one of the established commercial areas. The areas around Interstate 65 actually provide better access for the company, while they do not have to bring this to our personal communities. So there are many other locations for this. I also personally question the ethics of giving public parkland currently being used by residents of the community to a commercial for-profit company. So I would most strongly request and urge the commission to reject a proposal that, from my perspective, has been extraordinarily rushed and not thoroughly planned, and will indeed, if approved and built, forever change the character of what are now our quiet and peaceful residential neighborhoods. I thank you for listening.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, sir.
You mentioned speeding cars in your neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Where's your subdivision?
I live on Pine Lake Drive.
Well, it's relationship to the park, which
Its relationship to the park, if you go down Averett past Worsville, I live in that neighborhood. Okay? Thank you for consideration, I appreciate you listening.
Do you have any other comments? Discussion? Yes.
My name's Christine Gall, and I'm a homeowner that has recently just been getting involved in a lot of walking to be healthy, which I think a lot of Greenwood talk is, you know, make these trails, make it healthy, you know, get people out of their home and get to walking. And I have found that that park is great for that. It's awesome, and it's a nightmare over there already. And right across the street, there's a sign that says there's also a church coming. Am I right? A Baptist church. It says future home of. I mean, right across the street, right there at Stop 18. Right there, it says, and so there's another church. It just seems like I'm in agreement with the, over by I-65, somewhere where it's not residential, because all the traffic to get even over to this iceplex, it still has to come either Smith Valley Road or Worsville Road, which both are nightmares, have been nightmares for the longest time. And Worsville Road, it's a great idea, get us over to 65 easier. Well, the same traffic that's going over there, coming back, has anybody noticed coming off of 65, if you want to travel west, there's 2 lanes that you can have to get across 31. But now if you're taking Worsville Road and you want to get over the highway, there's only 1 lane to go straight, 1 to turn left, nothing to allow people to turn right. So when I come through there in the morning, traffic is backed up from 31 all the way back to that teacher's credit union. And that's before any of this, which, you know, I don't know, my face is probably red, but that's just, yeah, my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sharon Hayes, and I live at Ashford Ridge, and it's directly on Everett Road. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandma. We love the park. I love it. But with the school coming on, it takes me 3 stoplights, 2 blocks from Smith Valley Road to get out. Our neighborhood is all senior citizens. And we're all discussing how are we going to get out, because now it takes us 3 stoplights at certain times to get to Smith Valley Road. And we're only less than 2 blocks. What is it going to be? As senior citizens, we need an escape because we don't have any other exits to get out except on Everett Road. And the traffic is just unreal. And I think that you should consider of Everett Road direct. If this comes about, take Stop 18, direct that traffic straight through. Don't use, because this school coming in, you count how many buses that I pass. It's like 13 buses, bang, 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 and you're just sitting there. If emergency comes in, which has happened, we're messed up. And I'm against it. Now, I've got boys that love ice skating, but the traffic is just uncalled for. And I think you ought to consider a senior citizen in that area. There's like 75 of us homes in that area, and we're all 55 and older, and I'm considered the young one. So I didn't hear about this till 15 minutes before I arrived. I was told that it should have been presented to the public sooner so I could tell my neighbors, because they've got a bigger mouth than I've got. And I just appreciate you listening to us, because the traffic is what our biggest complaint right now, because we can't get in and out now. What will it be when the mothers line up to go get the kids? It's gonna be unreal. And I thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hayes, thank you very much. Do we have any additional comment? Yes, please.
We recently built there and moved in September. We did our homework and we knew Stop 18 was plotted out. We were under the impression that eventually it would be connected. Brighton is pretty much done with development right now. We have to expand. And like they mentioned, we have to have another exit or entrance in order to expand. So right now, we're concerned. Our home values are gonna go down, and we're concerned that our builder may have to pull out if Stop 18 is not the answer. Right now, we can't go to Cutsinger. We don't own the land to get over to Cutsinger. We can't go to April Drive. That's not been developed. We don't own that land either. Our only option is Stop 18. However, we don't want to be connected to the park if the Iceplex is there. And I'm not against the Iceplex. I have an older son. He's been involved with Center Grove Lacrosse. And I know they were pitching, the turf fields. It would be a wonderful idea, but I agree with the other residents, this is not the place. And we don't want the traffic. So if the Iceplex does go through, I believe we are all working to get Stop 18 stopped, but then again, we're wondering what's gonna happen to our neighborhood. Will it ever be finished being developed? Will Fisher pull out and lower homes be built behind us if someone else does come in? So we just want you to consider all of these options, and it sounds like the community is all in agreement that, we feel this is being rushed. I failed to see where they said the 60-year lease is only $1 a month. I don't feel that's appropriate either. And I don't know, I just feel like it's just being rushed. We haven't had a chance to open the Greenwood Middle School, get traffic studies done, see if we can even accommodate it. I've read that it's 800,000 visitors is what they anticipate eventually. So that's quite a bit, and especially for Abbott Road, people on that road. Cutsinger is gonna get it, Smith Valley's gonna get it. I know we want everyone to go to Worthsville Road and head out to the interstate, but we're not in a perfect world. They're gonna be going each direction, so I just hope that you guys can listen to the community and maybe just hit pause on this until we can further get some information, get some studies done, and figure out the best option for the community.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
I'm Vince Matthews, and I'm also a Brighton Estates resident. We just moved in a couple of weeks ago, and a large reason why we moved in to the neighborhood was to have access to the park. And of course, we had no clue that the Iceplex was going to be built at that time. I am in agreement with what Nan said. I think she did a great job representing my thoughts as well. But just to help increase the numbers and the support, I also just wanted to come up and indicate that I'm a concerned resident of Brighton Estates as well. I saw that there is some money allocated to do studies, so I would hope that part of those funds, if this project were to move forward, would be used to do a traffic study. I'm also very concerned about any connection to the park through Stop 18. I think it would be a disaster if we were to have 100 to 800,000 visitors, with that even being an option for them to go into and come out of the park to use the Iceplex. That just doesn't, I don't think, would be a very good match to run that type of traffic through a residential area. And I also think it just sounds a little, I guess, incongruent to create a economic development area inside a park. Those two things just don't seem to mix very well, so I would also support the consideration of moving the Iceplex, which I support, to a more appropriate area. I think it was mentioned to move it more toward I-65 and the areas that have been prepared for larger industries and more traffic, and I think that would be appropriate. So, thank you for your time.
Good. Yes, sir?
Brighton Estates also. See, the majority of this audience is made up of people who are in the process of closing, just closed, or just finished building there. And at that time, the park should be an asset, not a liability. I just think it's very, it's not bold, it's reckless. They are bold a lot, this is reckless. This is 4 months of planning to convert 6 acres of park space to a for-profit organization as proposed. There's so much land available. To me, if I look at the city-owned properties and I had to find a place now to put this, that's the only one that even comes with that sort of space for this, but this doesn't have to be rushed. There should be better time allocated to substantiating these facts that they're just saying. There's no studies been done. I've not seen one study that says this is gonna help property values. I've not seen anything that says it's gonna decrease. But it's being rushed through. That's what we find. 4 months is a very quick time in government. Applaud them for getting this far, but again, the park, I should not look at that park and think of that as a liability of what is the city going to allow to be built there. Green space, park space is a very limited resource. It's not easy to get. I've not seen proposals for adding more parks or even adding to Freedom Park, even though there's land for sale directly around it. To the south, the McCormick Trust is selling 32 acres of property. I would assume the Howletts are able to bid on that. To the west, the Terry Bright Farms property, that makes this real complex because Brighton Estates was going to develop it. They swapped the land back, so who knows what's gonna happen there. As far as I know, it's for sale though, maybe not. There's the Bonnie Bright property directly north of the school. If they have to put it in this area, there's other properties. I still disagree with this area. This is a residential area. There's not a lot of hockey players around this area. They said like 200 in the whole county or something. If you want to stick something in a residential area, expand the aquatic park. I'm not lose a battle if I try to argue that people don't like swimming. The numbers are there. That place is packed. Make it more community oriented and not so oriented on bringing dollars and tax money to the area. And I say that because I play there with my kids. We have birthday parties there. I give you $0. I can't put up a birthday party to $1 million over 10 years or whatever. But let's not look at that grass and be like, well, we need to turn a profit on it. This is grass, it's park, it's for families, it's for kids. You're not gonna get a lot of money out of it. It's just one of those things that you should do for the community. And we should protect it, not look at it as something to generate revenue off of. Because now, this happened in 4 months. What could happen in 4 more months? I shouldn't have to worry about that park. I should consider that an asset. Stop 18 gets mentioned. That's a funny one because there's just as much as a plan to do Stop 18 as there is Everett Road. Just throwing that out there. You can look at it as positive or negative, but there's just as much as a plan. But when I bring up Stop 18, well, it's out there. Yeah, we're probably not because that's what they would want me to hear. But it's part of the plan, and it's much more part of the plan than this park or this hockey complex ever was. And that has to be considered because the plan only calls to extend Stop 18 to Brighton Estates. That is the end of the plan. There's no plan to do it any further west other than the drawing that showed up that I saw in January for this park. And if they do that, that's going to put Brighton Estates, it's going to make it in the flow of traffic from everything west of 65 basically is going to come down 135 and over. And that can stay that way for 10, 20. The housing market goes down, who knows what, that can stay that way for a long time. That's a big concern for our families because we used to own a property on Honey Creek, and Honey Creek's getting to be a busy road. I intentionally moved off that property to get away from the traffic because I knew the roundabouts were coming because they were planned last summer when I evaluated the area. All in all, if this is the right idea, there needs to be a better design. I'm an engineer, I believe in design. I believe in data-driven decisions, thoughtful design. Okay, this is not thoughtful design. To me, this is knee-jerk reaction. There's 6 acres, it's in a park, let's take it. If the city wants an athletic campus, let's buy some property, let's make one. let's not just pigeonhole on a specialized sport like hockey. You know, we can afford to give 6 acres to hockey, but that 32 acres, they could add multiple turf fields, multiple baseball diamonds. You know, the lacrosse has a shortage, they're right. However, I'm seeing really vague answers about the turf field. I've seen the Hallets say it's going to eventually grow to 4 rinks. Well, is it going to stay 4 rinks? How easy and how much is it going to cost them to transition to a turf field? I think there need to be certain guarantees on those things because they're kind of, you know, making it sound like it's going to help a lot of sports when really their business is about hockey. You know, this is all about hockey. I would need to see some firm commitments there. I think this, all in all, it needs to be planned better, not rushed through. This meeting in itself was kind of very vague. I looked at the agenda this morning, like, well, that doesn't, you know, it's interesting, but I have no idea what resolution 001 is. And to be this quick, I don't know if it violates some law. First I saw the documents for this agenda was posted Friday. I don't know when the meeting was announced, but we need to slow it down and not let the businessman rush us to give up what should be sacred space in the park. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you for your comments, I appreciate that. Any other comments?
Good afternoon, Chairman Laughlin, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to also let know, I understand the concerns of everybody who's spoken today. There are things that's being looked into, and I think I'm correct in this moving forward, is this is only one stop along the way of several more boards that it has to go to for approval. So it's not, this is just one part of the process. I wanted to make everybody aware of that. But virtually, in the same token with these concerns, that we have received a very positive response from people not only associated in subdivisions around where it's going to be located, but throughout the rest of the city about how positive bringing this to the community would be. So I just wanted to say that we are excited. We're doing our due diligence. This is only one-stop process. I know that the mayor was here. He'd speak on behalf of it as far as us moving forward with the project. Thank you.
Just to follow up on what Deputy Mayor McLaughlin stated, this is just, as I stated, it's about the first step in a process, a lengthy process that will take, even just respect to the tax abatement, 4 meetings of council. So that'll be over at least a 2-month process for council. In respect to individuals' comments regarding the open door law was filed, I followed with respect to this. We're required to provide notice to the newspapers. I don't know when they published it, but they did have the notice in ample time, 48 business hours before today's meeting. So anyone who had requested as legally obligated to get that notice, it was provided in accordance with the open door law. The only other comment I would have with respect to the comments of the citizens, and as the deputy mayor said, we appreciate and are taking into consideration all of their concerns. Traffic concerns throughout the city are something that we take a look at, study, and take very seriously. With respect to the location of this specific facility, Freedom Park has been envisioned as a recreational center for various sports for some time, and at least for the past 5 years, it was contemplated that an additional building and an indoor facility would be located at that spot. In fact, when we built Freedom Springs aquatic facility, a pad was developed so that site was shovel ready for another recreational facility. Utilities, water, sewer, storm have already been ran to the site in anticipation that another sporting facility of some kind would be built there. So it's always been envisioned as a recreational center where multiple sports would be. The middle school just built and attached to their middle school a new sporting center and attached to that. But specifically in this location right south of Freedom Springs Aquatic Center, it has been contemplated for the past 5 years that another facility might be built there, and that spot is shovel ready with utilities for that. Thank you.
I have a question. Could you just revisit the question about future plans for Averett and Stop 18? I asked that because the middle school will not be operational for another 1.5 years.
The middle school actually will be operational. We believe, they will be there and be attending school from what we hear in the fall. So, it is my
The old one's not coming down for a while, but they're gonna be using the new one.
Yeah, the new one, I believe they are going to take ownership and begin occupation of that this summer.
All of us have had the interruption of the 35,000 buses coming out with the collection of the students or the parents showing up. So are there any specific plans?
I believe that the traffic patterns between the three facilities should be complementary. Aquatics facility will be heaviest in the summer. The Iceplex will be heaviest in the colder months when the aquatic center is not open. The Iceplex also will be heaviest used in non-school hours as opposed to during school hours. It won't be heavily trafficked during school pickup and drop-off. It also most likely will not have, sort of the same time frame as some of the middle school sports, so.
Okay, and the task that we have is to consider this as a recommendation
To the
to the
Common
Common Council. And when is the next Common Council meeting?
The Common Council meeting they will have introduction on March 20th. Then they will have their first vote on the declaratory resolution on the first Monday in April. There'll be a second vote at the third Monday in April, and then it will come back in the first Monday in May for a public hearing. So that is how long the process will take to go through the Common Council.
Okay, it's quite a time. So, my summary thought is there are a lot of good expressions of concern. Did you want to make one more comment? That's why you stand up, yes?
Yes.
We'll let you do that. Thank you.
And with all due politeness and respect to the deputy mayor, I'm on a computer board that serves our local area.
Sure.
I can tell you that there have been at least 70 people who have posted their fear and opposition to this proposal being placed in our neighborhoods. I would respectfully challenge the deputy mayor to produce a scientifically valid survey of the opinion of the residents in the communities that are surrounding this project as to the appropriateness of siting this project in this location. And as I hold a PhD in the appropriate topic, I would be more than happy to pro bono advise the city on the construction of an appropriate opinion measure for affected residents. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Any other comment? Sorry, yes, sir.
I want to reinforce what he just said. I'm a member of the same community, nextdoor.com. To be able to read posts, you have to be a verified resident for different ways to verify yourself as a homeowner. I did take those numbers. There's been over 100 responses to this topic. 15% were positive. 69% were unsupportive due to the nature of using parkland. I think that should hold some weight, seeing how they don't have any numbers to say one way or the other. I think that goes back to my statement that we need to get those beforehand, before just drawing assumptions and perceptions of what people are saying and who they are.
Any further comments? We'll close comments from the field, from the floor. I appreciate the passion and the quality of the comments. I think with respect to, you didn't have much of a notice, and yet you've organized a good group of people who are expressing your concerns, and that's what you're entitled to do. That's what you should do, and you should go back to your communities, and because this is a long-term process. It'll last us, staggered, it said through May. And so the next meeting is March
20th, 7 p.m., right?
March 20th at 7 p.m. Our responsibility is simply to look at this as something to pass on to the city council. The basic heavy lifting and final approval will be to the city council's commissioners. I I would say that with respect to other growing communities, and we were fortunate to be in one, that cities like Westfield and Fishers are expanding their sports facilities for their youth. It's an amenity expansion which attracts more businesses and families to the local area. So I think that that is something that Greenwood has been looking at, and this is an opportunity with the Freedom Springs, which also had great opposition before it was put in, and has been very, very successful, not only for the Greenwood residents, but for the county residents. So with that said, there is time to prepare an even more eloquent presentation. You just say, would they vote? Would that be the best way to produce it? Or to look at the road situation. And that'll be, you've got several weeks to do that. So, for the commissioners, any comments further from the commissioners?
Yes. Chris, I have a question. I'm a longtime advocate of the open records and open meetings legislation. And you mentioned that we met the 48-hour notification to the pertinent newspapers.
Correct.
Has the law been updated at all to require online posting?
No, it is not. We are not required to post it on the website.
We probably did, but probably not within 48 hours.
No, we do post them on the website as a courtesy, but the open door law requires us to notify those news agencies and anyone who requests that they be notified of meetings by certain, by email or by writing a certain way. Just to clarify that the EDC normally meets quarterly, and so you don't normally have a normal monthly meeting anymore, which is why we called this special meeting. If the EDC had regular monthly meetings, this was not necessarily any attempt to rush this process. It was that you don't have a regular meeting except for quarterly. We wanted to take it to council on the 20th. We had the opportunity to see if we could get it scheduled prior to that. So this wasn't any, we're not calling a special meeting in order to circumvent your normal meeting schedule, other than the fact that you normally meet quarterly, and we wanted to have you meet this month.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to address some of the people who spoke. First of all, I think it's a little odd to call it economic development area too in a park, because it's kind of doesn't, the language isn't right around it. But under the statutes, that's what we have to call it if we want to offer a tax abatement to the people who want to invest in our community. So that's kind of a bureaucratic piece to calling it that, I guess. I would ask, a lot of the objections, and the last gentleman who spoke said you weren't sure that was the right thing to put in a park, for example. So I guess my question to some of you, if we set aside some of the arguments, if the city were building an ice rink, would you say it shouldn't be in a park? And that's kind of where I'm coming at this now, is that it seems like it is a place where you would put it. I understand there are concerns maybe about the volume of people coming there and those kinds of things, but is there anybody who spoke against it? For example, you said 69% of the people posting on that closed site objected to it. Do you have a sense of any of those would fall away if this were a city-funded amenity? It wasn't a private concern coming in.
No, sir.
If you like, sure. Although I'm not the president here, he has to speak.
There is I think people support why. I think people support nonprofit organizations. There is a football field there. It's not the largest football field of its kind in the nation, and we're not trying to attract 800,000 plus people to it. I think that's the difference here. You want to build a small ice rink to support local residents, you don't need four. I don't think. I think the city would be in better control to make sure that it maintained a community focus and not a for-profit, trying to generate revenue. Because I think the city would see more value in just focusing on the ice piece and providing more turf space. Because there's lacrosse teams that are playing in vacant fields out by Maple Grove because there's none, okay? There's a lot more lacrosse players in Greenwood than I've ever seen hockey players in. And we're not saying it's a hockey rink. They've got Perry Park. I think that's in right above County Line in Indianapolis, but that's a hockey rink in the area. There's not necessarily an ice shortage. And I think they convert that to not turf, but a solid surface field.
I guarantee you there'll be more hockey players if there's ice nearby. I mean, we wouldn't have Little League baseball if there weren't baseball fields, right? Nobody
Right.
would say we don't have
Perry
any
Park
players.
is not far in my mind. But they also convert it to a hard surface in the summer and then play field sports on there. I don't know if that's because of demand driven or the cost to keep the ice year round, but that's just my impression. But the difference is when a businessman comes in and wants to build a business for profit in that organization and they're selling it as large scale, 800,000 visitors annually, the largest of its kind in the nation. That's not a community amenity to me. That's someone looking to have the government subsidize the business.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Appreciate it.
And I'll respond, and I promise to be very brief. My hunch is that much of the opposition to the location of this project also, like me, opposed the Greenwood Springs development, particularly because of the same issues that we've raised. And we've seen some of the negative impact on that in our neighborhoods already. I said I would guess. As a scientist, I think that it is the responsibility of every city, agency, board, committee, etc., to find out the real answers, which is a scientific survey of the people who are going to be affected by this in the neighborhoods surrounding this proposed development. And my remark about offering my services pro bono was not simply a joke. I think we need to find out how the people who are going to be impacted by this feel. You asked the question, so I wanted to reply.
Would you extend said survey to the wider community as well?
No, because the wider community doesn't have to deal with the impact of the traffic, the infrastructure changes, the increase in cars, the increase in crime, and the lack of planning for the infrastructure. The whole thing that's going to affect those of us who live right around it. Thank you.
Further discussion? Any further questions? And before us is the recommendation that we recommend to forward this to the City County Council for their consideration for approval of this resolution. Do I have any motion for such?
So moved.
Mr. Cummings offers a resolution. All in favor?
I'll second.
Second? John, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll get ready for your next meeting at Common Council, May 12th. Thank you all for attending. Appreciate it. March 20th.
March 20.
Gentlemen, we need your signature.